The divorce papers landed on my newborn daughter's blanket before I even understood what Daniel had done. For 1 second I thought it was a medical form. Another bill. Another document from the hospital that had already taken every bit of strength I had left. Then I saw his signature at the bottom, clean and sharp in black ink. Daniel stood in front of the fireplace in his gray suit, fixing one cuff like he was preparing for a meeting. "Sign them, Nora," he said. "Today." I stared at him from the recliner, one twin sleeping against my chest, the other whimpering in the bassinet beside me. My body still felt split open from surgery. I was wearing loose sweatpants over hospital underwear, and every breath pulled at the stitches across my stomach. I had been home less than 3 days. "Daniel," I whispered because my voice could not rise any higher. "Please. Not today." He looked past me toward the window where rain tapped softly against the glass. I already signed my part. Behind him, his mother, Barbara, stood near the kitchen doorway with her purse under her arm. She did not look shocked. She did not look sad. She looked tired of waiting. "Nora," she said, with that smooth voice she used when she wanted cruelty to sound like advice, "dragging this out will only make it uglier." The baby in the bassinet started crying harder. I tried to lean forward, but pain shot through my stomach so sharply that my hand gripped the arm of the chair. Daniel did not move. He did not bend down. He did not reach for his daughter. That was the moment I understood. Not when I saw the papers. Not when Barbara sighed like my heartbreak was bad manners. Not even when Daniel refused to look at me. I understood when the father of my children heard his baby cry, and stood there like the sound had nothing to do with him. "What did I do?" I asked. Daniel's jaw tightened. "This isn't about blame. It's divorce papers on a baby blanket. It is about blame." Barbara clicked her tongue. "My son needs peace. This house has been nothing but stress for months." Stress. That was what they called pregnancy when it was not happening inside their own bodies. Stress. Mood swings. Weight gain. Tears. Doctor appointments. Fear. Emergency surgery. 2 tiny girls placed under bright lights because they arrived too early. Daniel finally looked at me, and there was no softness in his eyes. "You changed," he said. "We both know it." I almost laughed. Came out more like a breath. "I carried your daughters." His phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. He reached for it so quickly that shame burned through me before I even saw the screen. His face changed. Just for a second. His mouth softened, his eyes warmed, and the man I had begged to hold my hand in the hospital appeared for someone else. "Is it Vanessa?" I asked. Barbara looked away. Daniel slipped the phone into his pocket. "That is no longer your concern." But I knew. Vanessa Marlowe. Perfect smile. Blonde hair. Real estate videos filmed inside houses she did not own. Designer dresses. Soft voice. Sharp eyes. She had started appearing under Daniel's posts months ago. Always with little jokes, little flames, little hearts. Then Daniel began working late. Then he began taking calls outside. Then he stopped touching me like I was his wife and started looking at me like I was a problem he had not solved yet. The baby cried again. I lifted her with shaking arms and held both girls close, their warm little bodies pressed against me. Ava on one side, Lily on the other. They were smaller than they should have been. Their fingers curled like question marks. Daniel placed a pin on the divorce papers. "I have a schedule," he said. "A schedule." My marriage ended because he had a schedule. Picked up the pen. My hand trembled so badly the first signature looked broken. Then the next. Then the last. The papers blurred through tears, but I signed every line he pointed to because I was too tired to fight a man who had already left. Daniel took the pages before the ink dried. Relief passed across his face. Not grief. Not guilt. Relief. He stepped closer to the babies, and for one foolish second hope rose inside me. Maybe he would kiss them. Maybe he would touch their cheeks and remember they were part of him. Maybe some piece of the man I married was still alive under the suit and the pride. He looked down at them. Then he turned away. "I'll send someone for the rest of my things." The front door closed softly behind him. That softness hurt more than a slam. Barbara stayed for a moment longer. Her eyes moved over me, over the babies, over the blanket stained with my tears. "You're young," she said. You may still find someone who wants this kind of life. This kind of life. She meant bottles on the counter, hospital bands on tiny wrists, a mother bleeding through her clothes while trying not to fall apart. I looked at her and said nothing. After she left, the house became so quiet I could hear rainwater running through the gutters. Daniel's coffee mug was gone from the sink. His shoes were gone from the hallway. His side of the closet was already half empty, like he had been packing his life away while I was learning how to feed 2 babies at once. That night, I sat in the dark with Lily asleep against my shoulder and Ava curled in the crook of my arm. The television was on low because silence felt too large. Then Daniel appeared on the screen. He stood beside Vanessa at a charity event downtown. She wore silver. He wore the same gray suit. The host laughed and asked how they had met. Vanessa smiled into the camera. Sometimes, she said, you meet the person you were meant to build a life with. The room around them laughed softly. Daniel smiled. Not the polite smile he gave neighbors. The real one. The one he used to give me when we were 27 and eating cheap takeout on the kitchen floor because we could not afford furniture yet. Then Vanessa leaned closer to the microphone. Some women, she said sweetly, just aren't strong enough to keep a successful man happy. The audience laughed again. I turned the television off. For a while I only sat there breathing. Ava moved in her sleep, her tiny mouth opening like she was searching for milk. Lily's hand rested against my collarbone. I looked down at them, and something cold settled inside me. I had begged Daniel not to leave that morning. I would never beg again. Across the hallway, inside the closet, there was an old cardboard box I had not opened since my father died. He had spent 40 years as a Texas reporter, chasing storms, city hall lies, missing person stories, farm closures, school board fights, and quiet human pain no one else cared to print. When I was little, he used to bring me into newsrooms that smelled like burnt coffee and paper dust. He would sit me on a rolling chair and say, "Nora, the truth does not need to shout. It just needs somebody brave enough to tell it." I carried both babies to the hallway and pulled the box out with one foot because my hands were full. Inside were notebooks, press badges, old tapes, and a yellow sticky note stuck to the top of a binder. My father's handwriting leaned across it. "When life breaks your heart, tell the truth anyway." I stared at that sentence until my tears stopped. The weeks after Daniel left did not feel heroic. They felt like bottles at 2 a.m. and hospital bills stacked beside cold coffee. They felt like sleeping in a chair because putting one baby down woke the other. They felt like standing in the grocery store aisle, calculating which formula I could afford while my stitches burned and strangers looked away. Daniel paid exactly what the agreement required. Nothing more. No call asking if the twins had slept. No text asking if I had eaten. No visit. Barbara sent one message. "You need to learn independence sometime." I deleted it, then cried while folding 2 tiny pink onesies over the dryer. But help came from places I never expected. Mrs. Hernandez from next door began leaving warm food on my porch every Sunday. She never knocked. She just left a casserole, rang the bell, and waved from her driveway like she knew dignity mattered. An older cashier at the pharmacy slipped extra diaper coupons into my bag and whispered, "You didn't see me do that." A retired nurse from church watched Ava and Lily for 2 hours every Thursday so I could shower, buy groceries, and remember I had a body that belonged to me. No one saved me all at once. They gave me small pieces of survival until I could hold them together. One afternoon, while both girls finally slept, I opened my father's box again. Not because I felt strong. Because I felt like if I did not touch something that had belonged to him, I might disappear completely. I found an old recorder and a tape labeled in his handwriting. "First story I ever loved." The machine clicked. Then my father's voice filled the kitchen. "Good reporting is not about famous people," he said. "It is about ordinary people carrying pain with no audience." I sat very still. Before Daniel, before marriage, before pregnancy turned me into someone everyone thought they could judge, I used to write local stories. Small pieces. Human interest columns. A widow who planted roses at a bus stop. A mechanic who fixed cars for single mothers. A teacher who bought winter coats for children and pretended they came from a school fund. I had stopped writing slowly. Not because Daniel told me to. Because I kept making room for his career, his dinners, his image, his comfort, Until one day there was no room left for my own voice. That night, after the twins finally slept, I opened my old laptop. The keys stuck. The screen flickered. I wrote anyway. I wrote about a widower who played piano every Friday at a nursing home, because he said loneliness sounded less frightening with music inside it. I wrote about a waitress working doubles to pay for her grandson's medicine. I wrote about people nobody noticed unless someone stopped long enough to listen. The first piece made me cry. The second made me breathe. The third made me feel like I had found a door in a room I thought had no exit. A week later, I sent one story to a small community radio station in Dallas. I expected silence. Maybe a polite rejection. Maybe nothing at all. 2 days later, my phone rang while I was changing Lily's diaper, and Ava was screaming beside us. "Is this Nora Hayes?" a rough male voice asked. "Yes. This is Frank Dalton at KTXA Community Radio." He cleared his throat. "Did you write the piece about the piano man?" I froze. "I did." My secretary cried into her lunch. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. She hates everybody. That means it worked." For the first time in weeks I laughed. Frank was 68, wore suspenders, and had the voice of someone who had argued with too many station managers and lost most of the time. He knew my father too. Said he was the only reporter in Texas who could make a mayor sweat and a grieving mother feel safe in the same hour. The station could not pay much. Small checks. Late nights. Weekend voiceovers. Editing jobs no one else wanted. But it was work. More than that, it was mine. So I worked with one baby sleeping beside the desk and the other against my shoulder. I recorded lines at midnight in sweatshirts stained with formula. I interviewed veterans during nap windows. I edited audio with one hand and held a bottle with the other. Daniel's life kept shining online. Rooftop dinners. Weekend trips. Vanessa's ringless hand resting on his chest in photographs. Captions about new beginnings and choosing happiness. I stopped looking after a while. Not because I was healed. Because I had 2 daughters and one tired heart, and I could not keep feeding pain that gave nothing back. Then Frank handed me a small assignment about elderly veterans being pushed out of a retirement complex near Fort Worth. No celebrity. No glamour. Just old men scared of losing the last place that still knew their names. I almost said I was too tired. Frank looked at me over his glasses. Tired people still tell the best truth. So I went. Mrs. Hernandez kept the twins. I drove through gray rain with my father's recorder on the passenger seat and a notebook open beside me at red lights. The men at the retirement complex did not trust me at first. They had seen too many people arrive with promises and leave with nothing changed. But I sat with them. I drank bad coffee from a paper cup. I listened. One veteran showed me a photograph of his late wife folded inside his wallet until the edges had gone soft. Another admitted he skipped medicine twice a week because rent had gone up again. A third said, "I fought for a country where I can't afford to die indoors." When the story aired, the phone lines at the station lit up. Then emails came. Then donations. Within 2 days, local businesses raised enough money to delay the eviction and force city officials to review the ownership deal behind it. Frank walked into the studio holding a printed email like it was a winning lottery ticket. "Nora," he said, "sit down." "I'm already sitting." "Sit better." He dropped the paper in front of me. A national morning show wanted an interview. I stared at the words until they moved on the page. "No," I said. "Yes." "Frank, I have twins. I barely sleep. I still own one decent jacket, and I think Ava spit up on it. Then we'll clean the jacket. I can't go on national television." He softened then. "Your father once told me your voice would matter if you ever stopped hiding it." My throat tightened. Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. A news alert filled the screen. Real estate influencer Vanessa Marlowe announces engagement to Dallas entrepreneur Daniel Hayes. Below it was a photograph of Daniel and Vanessa outside a luxury hotel, her hand raised toward the camera, a diamond flashing under the lights. For a moment the room narrowed. Daniel looked proud, free, unbothered. Like 3 days after our daughters were born, he had not dropped divorce papers on their blanket and walked away. I locked the phone. Then I looked back at the interview request. My hands were still shaking, but this time it was not from fear alone. Frank watched me carefully. Well, he asked. I picked up the paper and folded it once. Then I said, tell them I'll be there. The morning of the interview, Ava spit up on my only clean blouse. I stood in the bathroom of a small Manhattan hotel room, staring at the pale stain near my collar while Lily kicked inside her portable crib and Ava blinked at me like she had done nothing wrong. You have excellent timing, I whispered. Outside the window, New York looked cold and gray. Cars moved below like little pieces on a board, and the sky hung low over the buildings. I had barely slept. The girls had taken turns waking up all night, like they were protecting me from ever becoming too comfortable. Frank knocked at the door at 6 with coffee, 2 bagels, and the expression of a man trying not to panic. You look calm, he said. I'm not. Good. Calm people are boring. I almost smiled. At the studio, everything moved too fast. Producers walked around with headsets. Makeup lights burned hot against my face. Someone fixed my hair. Someone else asked if the babies could be shown on camera for a few seconds. I held Ava closer and said yes before fear could talk me out of it. A woman with silver hair and kind eyes came over before the segment began. Linda Mercer. Half the country knew her voice from morning television. My father used to watch her while drinking coffee at our kitchen table. You're Nora, she said. I nodded. She looked down at Lily asleep in her blanket, then back at me. You already did the hard part, honey. I wanted to believe her. But when they clipped the microphone to my blouse, my chest tightened. I thought about Daniel. I thought about Vanessa's ring. I thought about the night I signed papers with one baby crying beside me and another pressed to my heart. Then I thought about the veterans in Fort Worth. Arthur with his wife's photograph. The man who skipped medicine so he could pay rent. The quiet fear in that old building. This was not about Daniel. This was not about Vanessa. This was about people who had been ignored until someone finally said their pain out loud. The red camera light came on. Linda introduced the segment with the veteran's story. They played a short clip from my report, my voice soft under images of old hands, empty hallways, folded flags, and rent notices taped to apartment doors. Then Linda turned to me. Nora, this story has touched people all across the country. Why do you think it reached so many hearts? For 1 second I heard nothing but my own pulse. Then my father's voice came back to me. The truth does not need to shout. I looked at Linda and answered quietly. Because many people are scared in silence. They are not asking to be famous. They are asking not to be forgotten. The studio went still. Not empty still. Listening still. Linda nodded slowly. You speak like someone who understands what it means to feel forgotten. I looked down at my daughters. Ava's tiny hand had slipped out from her blanket. Lily slept with her mouth open, peaceful under the bright studio lights. I think most people learn that feeling at some point, I said. Some learn it in hospitals. Some learn it at kitchen tables. Some learn it when the person they trusted walks away. But pain does not make people worthless. Sometimes it shows us what still matters. Back in Dallas, Daniel was watching. I did not know that yet. He later told me he had turned on the television only because Vanessa was in the kitchen talking to a party planner on speakerphone. He was not paying attention at first. He was stirring coffee, half-dressed for work, already tired of conversations about flowers, guest lists, and which photographer made people look richer. Then he heard my voice. The mug slipped in his hand and coffee spilled across the counter. Vanessa snapped. Daniel, are you even listening? But he was staring at the screen. At me. Not the woman he left in sweatpants and tears. Not the woman he had convinced himself was weak, needy, too emotional, too tired, too much. I was sitting under national lights with our daughters beside me, speaking with a calmness he had never earned from me. Linda asked, You recently became a mother to twin girls. Has motherhood changed the way you tell stories? I breathed in slowly. Yes, I said. Motherhood taught me that love is not a feeling you keep when life is easy. It is a choice you make when everything is hard. The words left my mouth before I had time to protect myself from them. I did not say Daniel's name. I did not tell the country what he did. I did not expose the divorce papers or the baby blanket or Barbara's cold face in my kitchen. But truth has a way of finding the people who are guilty. In Dallas, Daniel sat down slowly on the edge of the couch. Vanessa walked in holding her phone. "What is wrong with you?" He did not answer. On the television, the camera briefly showed Ava and Lily asleep beside my chair. Their faces were fuller now, their cheeks rounder. Their hands no longer looked as fragile as they had in the hospital. Daniel stared at them like time had moved without asking his permission. Linda smiled at me. "Our producers tell me you already have several networks asking about future reporting work. How does that feel?" I blinked. "I'm sorry." The audience laughed softly. Linda smiled wider. "You may be one of the fastest rising human interest reporters in the country right now." For a moment I could not speak. 6 months earlier, I had sat in a dark living room believing my life had been reduced to bills, shame, and 2 babies whose father did not even kiss them goodbye. Now strangers were applauding because my voice had helped save people from losing their homes. I pressed my fingers lightly against Ava's blanket. "It feels," I said, my voice unsteady for the first time, "like my father was right." Linda tilted her head. "About what?" I smiled through tears. "That ordinary people deserve to be heard." The applause rose around me warm and full. Frank stood just off stage wiping his eyes with a napkin he had taken from the hotel breakfast table. When the segment ended, people came toward me with cards, offers, congratulations. I thanked them as best I could, though my mind felt too full to hold all of it. Frank hugged me so tightly I nearly lost my balance. "Your dad would be unbearable today," he said. I laughed. "He would not." "He absolutely would. He would be telling every stranger in Manhattan that his daughter saved Texas with a microphone." That night, after the twins finally fell asleep in the hotel room, my phone rang. Unknown number. I stared at it until it almost stopped. Then I answered. "Hello." For a while there was only breathing. Then Daniel said my name. Not the way he had said it in the living room. Not cold. Not impatient. Broken. "Nora." I closed my eyes. "What do you want?" "I saw you today." I said nothing. His breath shook. "I saw the girls." My hand tightened around the phone. "They are not a television clip, Daniel. They are your daughters." "I know." "No," I said softly. "You don't. Not yet." Silence. Outside, rain tapped against the hotel window, the same soft sound I remembered from the day he left. But this time, I was not in a recliner with divorce papers on my lap. I was sitting in a city I had once been afraid to enter, with my daughters sleeping safely beside me and my own name opening doors. Daniel swallowed hard. "I am ashamed of who I became." The words landed quietly. Not enough to heal, but honest enough to hear. 6 months earlier I would have cried. I would have asked if he still loved me. I would have mistaken guilt for rescue and regret for repair. Now I only looked at my daughters and felt tired. "You should be," I said. He made a small sound like the truth had cut him. I ended it with Vanessa. I let out a slow breath. "I didn't ask." "I know. And I am not your shelter because your new life disappointed you." "I know that too." For the first time he did not defend himself. He did not blame stress. He did not mention peace or pressure, or how unhappy he had been. He simply sat with what he had done. That silence mattered more than any apology he had ever given. "I need to sleep," I said. "Nora, wait." I waited. His voice became smaller. "Are they healthy?" I looked toward the cribs. Ava had one fist near her cheek. Lily was turned sideways, blanket kicked halfway off. "Yes," I said. "They are healthy." He exhaled like he had been holding that question for months and was too cowardly to ask it. "Thank you." I almost hung up then, but I said one more thing. "If you want to know them, you show up with actions. Not flowers. Not tears. Actions." "I will." "I'm not promising forgiveness." "I understand." "No," I said. "But maybe someday you will." Then I ended the call. I did not cry. That surprised me. I stood by the window and watched rain slide down the glass. For the first time, Daniel's regret did not feel like power over me. It felt like a door I could choose to open slowly, or not open at all. When I returned to Dallas, life did not become simple. It became busy. The interview spread faster than anyone at the station expected. Letters arrived from widows, veterans, nurses, retired teachers, grandmothers raising children who were not theirs by choice but by love. People wrote about rent, grief, illness, loneliness, and the strange comfort of hearing someone say, "I see you." Frank carried stacks of letters around like treasure. "You know what your problem is now?" he said one afternoon. "What?" "You matter." I laughed, but the words stayed with me. Daniel began calling once a week. At first, I let most calls go unanswered. Then I allowed short updates. 5 minutes. Then 10. No emotional speeches. No talk about us. Only the girls. Their doctor appointments. Their feeding changes. Ava's laugh. Lily's habit of throwing socks out of the stroller like she was making a point. Then one Thursday, he appeared at the pediatric clinic. I saw him before he saw me. He stood near the reception desk holding a small stuffed elephant, looking nothing like the polished man who had walked out of my house. No expensive watch. No sharp smile. His eyes were tired. His suit looked ordinary. His hands kept shifting around the toy like he did not know where to put his shame. When he saw the twins, his face changed. "Can I see them?" he asked. Every protective part of me said no. Then Lily reached toward the elephant and made a bright little sound. I looked at Daniel. "One at a time," I said. He nodded quickly. I placed Lily in his arms. He held her like glass. For a second she stared at him, serious and unsure. Then she grabbed his finger. Daniel's face crumpled. He turned away, but not fast enough. I saw the tears. The nurse at the desk pretended to look at a file. Older nurses know when not to speak. Outside after the appointment, Daniel stood beside his car while I buckled the girls into their seats. "Vanessa called them baggage," he said. My hand stopped on the car seat strap. "She said I needed to stop letting my past ruin our future." I turned slowly. "And what did you say?" He looked at the ground. "That they were not my past. They were the only future I should have protected." For a moment, the parking lot felt very quiet. I wanted satisfaction. I wanted the clean pleasure of knowing Vanessa's cruelty had finally shown its face. But I felt only sadness. Because my daughters should not have needed to be insulted by another woman for their father to remember they were precious. Daniel looked at me. "I don't expect you to make this easy." "Good. I don't expect you to trust me." "You shouldn't." He nodded. "I will keep showing up anyway." And he did. Not perfectly. Not magically. But consistently. He came to appointments. He learned how to warm bottles without overheating them. He sat on the floor and let Ava pull his hair. He watched videos on how to braid toddler pigtails and failed so badly that Lily looked like she had survived a windstorm. He took parenting classes without being asked. He sent money before it was due. He stopped performing regret and started doing the boring work of repair. Barbara called once, asking if I was really allowing Daniel to be humiliated like this. I answered while folding laundry. "Barbara, Daniel humiliated himself. I am allowing him to become useful." She hung up. I smiled for the first time all day. Still, healing did not move in a straight line. Some nights, after the girls slept, I would remember the divorce papers on Ava's blanket. I would remember Daniel's back as he walked out. I would remember Vanessa's smile. On those nights, forgiveness felt impossible. Then morning came and Daniel would arrive with diapers because Lily had a rash, or medicine because Ava had a fever, or groceries because he noticed I had been too busy to shop. I began to understand something I did not want to understand. People are not only the worst thing they have done, but they are responsible for what they do after it. My work kept growing. The network offered me a weekly feature about ordinary Americans carrying extraordinary burdens. I traveled when I could, always with help, always with a plan, always returning to 2 little girls who smelled like baby shampoo and chaos. I interviewed a retired nurse who cooked soup for homeless veterans, a grandfather raising 3 grandchildren after his daughter disappeared into addiction, a janitor who paid school lunch debts every December and never told anyone. Each story reminded me that pain was everywhere. But so was grace. Near Christmas, the network asked me to host a live holiday special about resilience. I almost said no. Frank nearly choked on his coffee. "You survived twins, divorce, national television, and Daniel Hayes discovering a conscience," he said. "You can survive a holiday special." So I said yes. The night of the broadcast, snow fell outside the Manhattan studio. Inside, the lights were warm, the audience was full, and my hands trembled as a producer fixed my microphone. Frank sat near the front with Lily asleep against his shoulder. Daniel sat beside him holding Ava carefully, one arm around her like he understood now that love was not something you carried when convenient. It was something you held even when your arms got tired. Before airtime, Daniel met me near the curtain. "You nervous?" he asked. "Yes. You're going to be wonderful." The words were simple. No charm. No performance. Just steady. I looked at him and saw the ghost of the man who had hurt me, standing beside the man trying to become better. Both were real. That was the hard part. "Thank you," I said. During the broadcast, I told stories that felt like small candles in a dark room. A widow who cooked Christmas meals for strangers because grief needed somewhere to go. A teacher who kept extra coats in her classroom closet. A veteran who wrote letters for men who no longer had family to call. Near the end, Linda Mercer appeared as a surprise guest and turned to me with a gentle smile. "Nora, after the year you've had, what do you believe love really means now?" The studio grew quiet. I looked at Frank. And my daughters. At Daniel holding Ava with tears already shining in his eyes. Then I answered from the deepest place in me. Love is what stays when life becomes inconvenient. My voice trembled, but it did not break. It is not the shiny part people post for others to admire. It is the hand that reaches for the crying baby. The person who sits beside the hospital bed. The one who tells the truth when lies would be easier. The one who keeps showing up after pride has nothing left to protect. No one moved. "I used to think success would heal what happened to me," I continued. "But success only gave me a louder microphone. Healing came from smaller things. A neighbor leaving food on the porch. A mentor believing my voice still mattered. My daughters smiling at me when I felt empty. And someone who did terrible damage choosing, day after day, to become accountable for it." I did not look at Daniel when I said that. I did not need to. The truth had already reached him. After the broadcast, applause filled the studio. People hugged me. Producers congratulated me. Frank cried openly and dared anyone to mention it. Daniel waited until the crowd thinned. Ava was asleep against his shoulder, her small hand resting on his collar. "You became the woman I should have protected," he said quietly. The old version of me would have needed those words to feel whole. The woman I had become did not. "I became her because I had to," I said. "Not because you left. Because I stayed." His eyes filled. "I know." Outside, snow kept falling soft against the dark windows. Lily stirred in Frank's arms. Ava slept through everything peaceful and warm. I reached over and adjusted her blanket. For a second, Daniel and I stood close enough to remember what we had been, but far enough to respect what had changed. I did not know exactly what our family would become. I only knew it would never again be built on silence, image, or one person carrying all the pain while another called it peace. Some things cannot return to what they were. But they can become honest. And honest, I had learned, is stronger than perfect. The next morning, I flew home with my daughter sleeping beside me, and my father's old recorder tucked safely in my bag. The sky outside the plane window was pale gold. For the first time in a long time, I did not feel like a woman abandoned at the end of a story. I felt like a woman still writing one. And if life had taught me anything, it was this. The people who leave when you are broken do not get to define what you become after they are gone. Pain may expose who failed you, but it can also reveal the strength you forgot was yours. Real love does not always arrive loudly. Sometimes it is quiet. A casserole on a porch. A hand around a baby's finger. A voice telling the truth after months of silence. A person choosing responsibility after shame. A mother standing back up, not because the world was kind, but because two little girls were watching her learn how to live. I once thought betrayal had taken my future. But it had only taken the illusion. What remained was harder, slower, and far more beautiful. The truth. And this time I was not afraid to tell it.